and professionally, I work as a data scientist at Alexforbes. So, in short, what today's talk is about is basically to take everyone through what it takes to make it in the industry, and also what I perform in my role on a day-to-day basis. I think the biggest caveat is firstly the title of data scientist, especially in my case, is very misleading, and in other instances, it's very misleading because I don't just do data science, and that's something you're going to find in a lot of roles, that it's more than just data science. So, yeah, without further ado, I think I'll just go through the slides, and then from there on, we can go through, yeah, we can have a Q&A for anyone who has any questions. All right, cool. Let me start with the first slide. So yeah, essentially, this is about what it really takes to break into tech, finance, and data science. And you're going to see a lot of overlapping themes in a lot of these industries, because once you can understand one, it's very easy to move on to the next one. And some of the things I'd like for us to cover today is firstly my role and what I actually do, what a robo-advisor is. So just some background, the company I'm working for right now build a robo-advisor, which is basically an AI tool that helps the average individual invest. The work nobody tells you about, the most important lesson, you are more than your degree, and how to position yourself in terms of networking and building connections. And finally, how to combine all of these things to really stand out in the industry. Yeah, so let us first start with what is a robo-advisor. As I mentioned earlier, it's essentially an AI tool that helps people invest. So we built a advice text that basically looks at things like your risks, what kind of assets you want to look at, and it allows the average person to invest. So for those who are more quantitative in nature, there's a lot of math and statistics involved in creating this robo advisor and allocating investments, looking at future projections, how much you're going to get out, rebalancing your portfolio based off of more deposits and withdrawals. So the interesting part of having that system is you can't just understand the mathematics. You need to understand the finance and how investments work and how markets move. So we also have a lot of portfolio rebalancing based off of, let's say, what's happening with the war in Iran right now. Petrol prices going up also affects certain commodities, certain stocks. The direct commodity affected would be oil in this instance. So yeah, basically that's what the company is about. And to give you more background, we started under Rand Merchant Investments for OUTsurance, wherein I was in a more actuarial role. And then we got acquired by Alexforbes because they wanted to position themselves from just being institutional to a retail investment platform. Yeah, and what we actually do is a lot of data science and actuarial science. So we build and maintain models, data pipelines, all these analytical frameworks. The robo advice, again, you go into the platform, it asks you a few questions based off how you answer. The algorithm will give you a recommendation of what kind of investment to make. And yeah, a lot of what we do is SQL and systems development. So that's more leaning in towards actual data science. So taking data we get from websites, from clients, from admin portals, and then, yeah, basically building stored procedures, which we then put into reports that is used for the actual data science. And then there's white paper authoring. So this is where it's not enough to just be a data scientist, but you actually have to understand the investment space. And what I love about the investment space is it basically means you have to acquire as much knowledge as possible because, for example, if we're investing in the NASDAQ, particularly in NVIDIA, you might not be aware of how an event in the agriculture sector actually affects NVIDIA's. For example, there might not be, what do you call this? There might not be enough food in a certain region where they get their materials to make their AI chips, and that affects the stock price of Nvidia. So the whole idea, and this is what I like about the financial industry, is it kind of forces you to know as much as possible, and it rewards you for knowing as much as possible. A little more of what we do is FIC compliance. So that's something that's in particularly every financial institution, having a risk model for all of your clients to make sure that there's no foul play there. And then tax submission modeling is basically, because we're an institution that deals with clients' money and revenue, then we are obliged to actually provide SARS with the profits and losses clients made so that SARS knows how to tax them. That's unavoidable in every financial institution. It's just part of legislation. And I think I also want to touch on the fact that I actually studied a bachelor's in human genetics from the University of Pretoria, currently doing applied mathematics, and yet I got myself into an actuarial role. So currently the title is data scientist, but it's actually more of an actuarial role. And how I part of my day to day is testing and maintaining the actuarial financial models, looking at fund values, retirement outcomes, and cash flows, and a few other things, making sure everything runs correctly. And I guess essentially how I got myself into this role was I had an interview first with Outsurance, and I did as much research as possible on that company. And I also, before that, did a lot of research on the investment space. And then I was given the opportunity to choose which team I wanted to work for. And what allowed me to both get into that position and learn from that position is purely curiosity. As long as you can prove to them that you have some level of knowledge, some qualification that matches with what they're doing, even if it's not perfect, then you can get yourself into spaces that traditionally are reserved for other qualifications, because most of us just learn on the job. You're not really expected to know any or everything rather. Yeah, so a lot of the work is dealing with actuarial models because the investment space is very actuarial heavy in terms of when they develop models. But yeah, especially if we're looking at things like risk and statistics. So a little more about the FIC that we built. It's like I said, it is based on regulation. We look at what clients are doing with their money, things like large transactions. We do checks for suspicious patterns, and we do that just to ensure that if there's any foul play or form of money laundering, that it can be caught quickly and investigated to prevent any form of fraud or corruption. Yeah, but this is something that, like the tax submissions, we have to do for the regulatory bodies to ensure that we're not in a position where we can be accused of colluding with anyone dealing in illicit activities. Yeah, and then the next part is the tax submissions, basically. Again, that's a SaaS thing that we do. Basically, we built a model that, based off of the accounting data we have, generates tax submissions for clients, helps them. Well, we do it on their behalf as regulation requires. And yeah, that's something we built. It took quite a long time, and I think we're one of the few institutions that have built this model. We primarily use database technology to create this, and yeah, it's one of those things like audits. That's something I didn't mention in this presentation, like audits that you have to do. So it is actually very useful to know how those systems work, because that's my recommendation with that is that's something that's always going to be in any financial institution. So having this knowledge of taxes and anything that has to do with compliance is going to make you valuable all the time, especially early on as someone who maybe wants to go into software dev or data science or data analytics. And then further on my role, we have an advice text engine that basically tells the client what to invest in, and then we do some testing on there. Like I said earlier, calling myself a data scientist is quite misleading because this is dev testing. This is more on the software engineering side. But we build a robo advisor, then we go on the apps and the websites, and then we actually test to make sure it's giving the right advice and the calculations are working properly. So yeah, that's part of the role. So I actually want to step into more how to prepare yourself for the world of work. So I guess the overarching philosophy here is a lot of graduates, what they do, let's say you're studying mathematics or computer science or software engineering, is they focus primarily on the mathematics, software engineering. Maybe you want to become a software engineer, a data scientist, and then you focus primarily on that, which is why CVs get rejected, which is why you're going to struggle with interviews because when they call you, let's say, for example, when they call you, you're one of many with that qualification that you have in hand, whatever qualification you have. And what companies love is someone who actually shows interest and shows initiative and can hit the ground running. When you just know how to work with differential equations or how to do advanced programming, so data structures and algorithms, but don't understand the industry you're trying to get into, then that's just background noise for them because you have this knowledge, but you don't actually know how to apply it. So I'm just going to go through this slide. The degree gives you tools, but the industry gives you the context to use them correctly. And again, you can build models, you can have your data analysis, but without actual insight, understanding what's going on. If we create a dashboard regarding how many sales we made and how much revenue we've gathered from those sales, but you don't understand why month to month the sales differ, then that doesn't mean anything. Because part of being a successful data scientist is being able to explain to senior management, hey, this is what I built, this is a visualization we got, and this is what the numbers actually mean. For an example, if you want to go into banking, because I know that's a very lucrative one, then you have to understand topics and ideas within banking. You can't come with your qualification and not understand what credit risk is, what liquidity is, what money markets are. You actually have to put in that effort to study banking. The same applies with insurance. You need to know what the IFRS 17 is, how premiums are priced. And the same thing with investment, know markets, asset classes, and risk profiling. So basically, treat your degree or your qualification as the foundation and then add more with this knowledge of the industry. So that's context that actually allows you to use that tool to your advantage. You can do that a lot by working on side projects. And my experience with the industry is that you want to work on side projects that are related to new problems that they're trying to solve rather than case studies that have already been dealt with in the industry. And the reason for that is when managers want to hire you and they see that you've taken initiative to a new problem. I'm going to give an example. In insurance, for example, the idea of self-driving cars is affecting future revenue and insurance because if cars drive themselves and they do it perfectly, then less people need insurance because those cars aren't going to be allowed to be on the road if they make a lot of errors. And the idea is they're going to have a lot less mistakes than a human being. What does that lead to? Less people taking out insurance and less insurance premiums being received. Therefore, these guys make a lot less money. Now you have to find a way to how do we deal with that? What can we do? What are other things that you can still insure on a driverless car? What are other ways that if we don't insure this in a driverless car, then how can we make sure that we're part of that market? And how can we position ourselves that we don't end up losing our market share in any sense? So by real world problems, focus on something the industry is struggling with now and try and come up with a solution. Whether your solution works or not is not the point. The point is show that you are someone that will grow and will help them solve whatever risk or opportunity cost they're losing out on. That's a very important one. And I guess the philosophy behind that is your career doesn't start when you graduate and start looking for jobs. Your career starts when you decide you want to start. And positioning yourself and gaining these skills while you're still doing your degree and then putting yourself out there is what really makes you stand out there. Um, and then let's look at the different industries that we can talk to. So if you want to go finance and investment, which is personally my favorite, because once you work there, you can pretty much do anything. Then you want to learn markets, asset classes. You want to understand risk, portfolio theory, regulation, and know what a unit trust is. And then if you want to go into banking, which tends to typically pay a lot more, then you want to understand your things like credit scores, liquidity ratios, payment systems, and all that type of stuff. And then again, with insurance, it's about claims modeling, underwriting, long-term and short-term insurance. And then with consulting, which is basically an umbrella for everything, you also need to understand primarily how to solve business problems. Then financial technology, very much like finance and investments, is understanding things like crypto, coding, financial products. And then there's government, which is quite overlooked, but in desperate need of more innovation. There's data systems, how to manage the power grids and high impact, and also looking at things like how to better improve certain government departments. And the idea is you have all of these fields, but in my opinion, if you can choose to learn one, like banking or consulting, you kind of have an understanding, a better leg up on the other ones, and it makes it easy to get into the other ones. So my recommendation is choose one, because if you work in banking, it's easy to get in finance. If you work in insurance, it's easy to get into government. If you work in consulting, it's easy to get into banking. And to make this easy, find the industry that interests you the most, because data scientists, software engineers, typically in South Africa, most of them don't work in silos where you're a software engineer and you work for a software engineering companies. Most of the time you work for a company that provides, you work either for a company that provides solutions to other companies, or you work for a division in a bigger company that's not necessarily a software engineering company. So it helps to have that context and to understand these things. Um, and then moving on to the next part, being more than your degree. So I spoke of essentially what you call this, having your degree and then having the context, which is knowing the industries you want to get into. But there is another component, and that is likability, because whether we like it or not, education doesn't really get you places. It's just somewhat of a marketing tool you use. But what you really need to do to get into rooms, to get into spaces, to get a successful business in any sense or form is actually your likability. And that's helps you make connections. So connections will always be more powerful than education. It's not a South African thing, it's a global thing. And how you create those connections is becoming an interesting person. So we've conducted quite a few interviews. I think somewhat about 8 interviews for our teams. I've also worked with people in investment banking to understand the interview culture. And one thing that puts managers off is someone who doesn't come across as interesting. So by hobbies and interests, my recommendation is stay away from the things that seem typical, like traveling, going out, restaurants, and reading novels, and actually build things that like set you apart. That could be paddle, that could be mountain biking, that could be surfing. Again, depending on what opportunities are available to you, that could be motocross, anything along those lines. And the thing is, sometimes what sets you apart is the fact that you have an interesting hobby that a hiring manager or a potential investor might actually take interest in or want to know about. So managers don't hire just for your skill and your ability. They hire because there's a certain culture they want to maintain in their team. Companies hire based off of a certain culture they want to maintain. And you could be brilliant. You could know your stuff. You could be highly educated. But if they feel like you're not likable, you're not interesting enough, then they're not going to take you in. And the thing about having interest and having all these hobbies is it doesn't matter typically doesn't matter the culture of the company. You should gel in with every sort of company because people want to be around likable people. Next thing is staying current. So again, if you want to be interesting in conversation, know what's going on around the world in your industry, whether that's political, whether that's socially economical, whether we're talking what's happening in the markets. You want to make sure you stay up to date. So find something, find a tool, find something that makes you up to date with what's going on. That could also be reading scientific journals as well. But again, you need to position yourself as an interesting person. Side projects are also quite useful, just giving you that exposure to what problems are, and having a GitHub portfolio always makes you look more interesting. And yeah, I guess the last part is philosophical. Don't wait to be asked, volunteer, lead, propose solutions, and be a proactive person because that will make you stand out. And then again, building that degree, building that context, building that likability, you actually have to go out and network. I've said before, and I will say again, connections are far more powerful than education. So you want to work on your LinkedIn profile to some extent. And people have mixed results when it comes to LinkedIn, but it's still worth the try. You want to attend these events and seminars and actually be a person who talks to people and engages with people. What I've noticed is interesting people who have interesting lives tend to have more confidence when engaging with strangers. So again, the whole pick up new hobbies, new interests, and new ideas makes you more confident as a person. And then another important one is mentorship. Find someone doing what you want to do, ask from them, and also be someone who contributes to the discussion. And let's move on to the next part. I guess the final equation is your qualification, your industry knowledge, and your network and soft skills make you career ready. Yeah, that's essentially the whole idea that for whatever career you want to get into, make sure that the technical stuff you're learning can actually translate because it's not about getting a degree. A degree is supposed to be one part of the picture. Your degree is one part, is one facet of your life. And the whole idea of university, initially when it was started, was not, no, we're going to give people degrees so they can get jobs. The idea of university, when it was founded, was we want to educate people on certain topics. We want to have discussions. We want to have research. And it was because the people who went to university at the time were the most likable, the people who had the most knowledge, the people who had unique skills. That's what got them into jobs and into careers. And then as the population caught up, more people went to universities. And all of a sudden, the philosophy of a university is a key to success was born, which is a fake philosophy. The idea of university was knowledge and discussion. And then those people just came across as more interesting. But now that everyone goes to a university or college, you have to still find a way to make yourself interesting, which is possible if you pick up these things, if you make sure you understand the industry you want to go into, if you build these networking skills, if you become an interesting person. So look at your degree not as the center point of your life, but essentially what we call this but essentially part of a larger picture. So there's a few things you can do to start. Pick an industry, read about the industry, update your LinkedIn, start a project, and come to networking events. I think I'll just head to the last slide. And yeah, I guess closing off, your degree is just one part of everything, not the destination. And make sure to work on other aspects of your life. Hope that giving you an insight of what working in finance and investments is like was useful. And yeah, I'll just leave the floor to anyone who has any questions. Yeah, please ask. I see someone. Hi, a day.
Good evening. Um,
Hello.
Thank you so much for your time and your powerful insights. Um, the question I have is, okay, when we think of finance, or in the broader sense, right? We always think about um, the stock markets, um, or will I say portfolios, right?
Hmm.
But it's very rare that we hear about forex market. I know Bitcoin is like it's a new thing, but I'm not talking about Bitcoin. That one is a bit of a crazy, almost like a black box in a sense, where you dump your money there, you get something out. You could be an instant millionaire in a week. Who knows? But I'm talking about trading currencies. I've done a bit of research and I found that large corporations, institutions use forex to sort of hedge losses in a sense. So, for example, some hedge fund manager will have a portfolio uh, of clients, and he's going to manage some stocks for them, some CDs, some bonds, ETFs, and when there's like a dip in that in any one of the clients' portfolio, then they're like, okay, cool. So we need to find a way to hedge this risk so that we don't perpetually lose to the point where you lose the client's money, they run away from you, and it kind of spirals down into the doom of that entire hedge fund. But my question is then, what's your experience and take on applying data science to forex in particular? Either, okay, well, firstly, as well, let me say through the individual perspective, and then secondly, through an institutional perspective.
Okay, that depends on the context. It depends, are we investing passively or are we investing actively? Um, in data science, so if, for example, we're doing passive investment, so we're looking at the long term, then what you want to do is look at the long-term data. Whatever currencies you're investing in, let's say we're talking about the US dollar and we talk about how stable it's been over the past 30 years. Flip, we could even go 100 years if we wanted to. And then based off of that, I hope I'm answering your question properly. Based off of that, that's how you decide, okay, that's where you can decide, okay, is this a good thing to use to hedge, basically as a suspension or cushion to prevent if markets fail or if markets fail or if they do well. And Forex usually sits more in the category of money markets. We're looking at what do you call this? We're looking at currencies and how they're performing. So again, that depends. Long term, you would want to look at, if we're talking passive, you want to look at long-term data. The other thing is, and this is where being a data scientist, understanding numbers is enough, because the long-term data could make you believe that, okay, the dollar is safe, the dollar is secured. We've seen even in times of problems or dips in the market, the dollar has done well. But then you have to look at other factors as well. So this is why I want to put context over just the technical skills. How is America doing? They have their debt ceiling is increasing. You have to look at things like debt is increasing. Do people feel comfortable with dollar reserves? Are countries keeping dollar reserves, or are we seeing an increase in how many countries are dumping dollar reserves? And that, given that you have things like BRICS is happening, are people really abandoning the dollar? How are countries or governments reacting to the fact that the USA sanctioned Russia because of the war in Ukraine? Now, other countries, and also with the thing in Iran and Venezuela, now other countries feel like by you keeping that dollar, that they're exposing themselves to risk, financial risk. So it's stuff like that. Yes, the numbers, the statistics, the stochastic modeling will help you understand as a data scientist, but when you get like when you actually have context of what's actually happening in the world, that will drive your decision. Um, what we typically like to do is we have an investment committee, and this is the same for any investment firm. or investment company. And from that investment committee, people with the experience give advice on what the asset allocation should be. Should we continue investing in these currencies? Should we rather move to bonds? Should we rather move to commodities? So it's basically the answer to your question is a universal answer for everything out there. And then if you want to talk from an individual perspective, again, you can learn all these cool tricks. You can learn quantitative trading and quantitative analysis. That's really nice. But I still think context matters a lot. And if you are going to be actively trading, then I would recommend doing it the long way. So go and get your master's, your PhD, go and actually work for a bank or a trading firm, get that 20 years of experience, and then you can start actively trading. I don't recommend take your salary and then start actively trading with the markets because I promise you, you're most likely going to fail. You're most likely going to fail, especially because right now there's the belief that people have knowledge before certain events happen, the idea of insider trading. And also, as an individual trader, it's you versus with firms with like 100 PhD graduates and the fastest computers and the most advanced technology. You're never going to win. So if your idea is to trade as an individual, I'd say be patient, wait, start your own company later on in life, and then see how it goes from there. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, it was the thorough answer.
Okay.
Thank
Don't
you.
know if there's anyone else who wants to ask a question. Yes, please ask. It's L Jubeni.
It's all the chocolate Jupiter. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, I can hear you.
Right. I just want to ask you, is that science only limited in finance or is there another like broader
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
perspective in finance? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
I'm asking like, okay, I can see you speaking more about that.
You keep coming
Other
in and
point,
out. You keep coming in and out. I don't know if it's a network problem, but you can post your question on the chat if I don't know.
I can reiterate the question if you don't mind. So
Okay.
she was asking if data science applies to other things outside of finance. Because I mean, today is about finance and data science. So she's asking, can you couple data science with other things?
Yeah, you can actually. Quite a few things. I mean, there's data science in website analytics, that's your Google Analytics. You can use data science even in an engineering firm. Let's say you work for BMW, the actual like engineering department, and we're looking at the performance of your new BMW M2 over certain distances, certain places, under certain conditions. You can also use data science there as well. So it's really not limited to finance per se. However, in the South African context, most data scientists work for financial institutions to some extent or another. And the reason why is data science can help you a lot when it comes to generating more profits, minimizing your losses, increasing your revenue. But yes, there are a lot of other applications for data science. And yes, you do have the freedom to, let's say you want to do it in the engineering context, then do it for the engineering context. My caveat there would be, in whatever place you want to go into is every company, or at least every company, is going to the fate to a point where they have a finance or auditing department that uses data science. So even in BMW, who primarily focus on, even in marketing, actually, anything to do with finance and marketing, even in BMW, primarily focus on building cars. They have a marketing division, they have a finance division. Those people are going to need data scientists as well. So that's why I lean heavier towards, okay, there's these other industries, but if you understand the finance thing, you can do the marketing thing. You can pretty much work for anyone. Not sure if that answers your question fully. Okay. I see Tima Tabata.
Yes, speaking is Teddy Matabata.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope we are well.
Good.
I just want to be precise, no? So I've been building projects. I myself taught data analytics, so I've been building projects and focusing on fintech, finance, and all the stuff. So what I want to know is maybe in your company, do they allow volunteers or work integrated learning?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak about the company per se because I'm not necessarily representing Alexforbes in this case or instance. It was just a way to reach out to students and give them some information. Best advice I can give you is go to the company itself and apply there. Yeah, but from what I know is our company particularly is not really looking for new data scientists or data analysts at the moment. They would rather take someone who's working in another department, pay for them to get training or further their education, and then take them into the data science department. Again, reason being because this person has like 5 years working in the company. They understand how certain systems and processes work. So rather teach that person data science so that they have context of the data than find a person from outside, let's say a graduate, someone straight from university, who you still have to teach the systems and processes of the company. Hence, I was emphasizing on it's great to know these things, but know the industry. And another thing, if you are going to interview for a company, do as much research as you can for that company. A trick I used is when you have an interview, right? There's a portion where they ask you questions and you answer. And then after that, there's a part where you ask them questions and they answer, right? Ask them questions about initiatives that are happening in the company. Let's say an insurance company wants to start providing pet insurance. Ask them about that. Ask them deep questions regarding that. What does that do? That shows initiatives. That shows that you actually want to work for that company rather than, oh no, I'm just here to collect a paycheck. I'm good with whatever. So if you ever do, never mind Alexforbes, think bigger. Any company, right? And you want to apply there, do your research, know what's happening on social media, go to their websites, flip. If you know who's going to interview you as well, go to their LinkedIn, get to know more about it. It's a bit stalkerish, but if one of the people, for example, an engineer can do data science as well. So if one of the people is a chemical engineer, then you can ask them a more personal question, like what made you go from chemical engineering to data science? That's, I feel, more useful advice than telling you, oh, Alexforbes has an opening. Because even if they do, like, that's, you're still going to follow the normal process everyone else follows. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Thank
Does
you.
that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions. Blessing.
Hi, can you hear me?
Good, thanks, and you?
Okay. I was just curious. Within actuary and like data science, like how much time are you actually spending like cleaning up data?
Sorry, you said how much time am I actually spending doing what?
Cleaning data, like sanitizing data that you want to use for a particular model.
This is a bad way to answer the question, but basically as much time as it takes, or whatever the deadline is. Ideally, you would like to have unlimited time, right? Because then you can get more data inputs and then analyze the data, but they probably give you some sort of deadline. So maybe you guys work in sprints, and in the end of 6, 7 months, you should have this stuff up and running. And it also depends where we are. Are we starting from scratch? If that's the case, then you're gonna need to get that data in whatever allocated time they've given you. Speed does matter, speed and quality, and then you can train your models using that data. If we're talking about something that's already there and it's been what you call this built a while back, and maybe we're adding something new. Let's say we want to add crypto investments, then you're probably going to spend a lot less time training that data. I can't give you an exact time frame or a timeline because it depends what model are you using. What do the deadlines look like? What's the pressure looking like? How soon do they need to get this out? But one thing I can tell you is companies tend to be very unreasonable in terms of time. They tend to be very unreasonable, especially if you're working for somewhere big and it's something that they need to do to get a competitive advantage.
Hello?
The
Hello?
beauty of
Hello?
it is your,
Hello?
sorry. Okay. I'll just continue answering the question. Yeah, the beauty of it is you're not going to work alone. You're probably going to work with other people. And unless you're starting from scratch, most of the models have been trained by data, and you're probably going to add a new feature. Yeah, you're probably going to add a new feature or test how it performs given market conditions. Again, the better you are at this, the quicker you'll get it done. But it's a process that's refined. We don't train our models on the data and then we're done. It's after another 3 months, after another year, we'll do more training and refine the model. So you don't have to get them perfect, but they shouldn't be bad. Does that answer your question? Zintle?
Good evening, Mr. Mkansi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
All right. So my question is, what role is AI currently playing in the data science space? And my second question is, are those like YouTube roadmaps that like you usually get, like they tell you like if you want to become a data scientist, these are the things that you need to know, these are the softwares that you are supposed to be able to actually know how to use and stuff. Are those things actually like really like helpful, like in order for you like to follow them, and then will you be able to get into that space that you want to get into? Like, it's not for me like I'm not per se thinking of data science, but a related tech industry, which is like data engineering. Like, if you follow those roadmaps, will you actually be able to get into that space?
Let me answer the second question before answering the first, because the first one is a bit tricky. Um, yeah, I would say that if the person has enough, well, firstly, whoever created that roadmap, always go and find their qualification and their work history. So there are quite a few good people. Go and see what they studied, where they studied, and then go and check out their work history. Okay, I worked for Oracle, I worked for NVIDIA, something like that. Then you can pretty much trust them. Another thing is just compare roadmaps and find similarities and differences, and also don't make life difficult for yourself. You don't have to do the most difficult roadmap. Try and do the things that are easiest to follow and then build upon that. So I would say yes, just do your own due diligence for the second question. Should get you in the industry because we always want the same thing. Even in data engineering, we're talking SQL, Python, C Sharp, Excel. Microsoft Excel is actually quite important. Analytical skills, understanding certain models, machine learning models, and all that stuff. So it's typically around the same stuff. Yeah, and again, the term data engineer really depends on when you're working, because I'm not traditionally a data scientist. So I would say it's good to want to be a data engineer, but there's some roles that are going to say data scientist, but it's more towards what you conceived to be a data engineer. And then the first question, AI. I have a lot of opinions on that one. So firstly, in principle, AI is nice, but don't use it if you don't have to. Because there's something called overfitting, and you're using an AI model for something that could have been done with something easier. So maybe you're using machine learning for something, machine learning neural networks for something that just needed linear regression. It's like use it when it is necessary. An idea I was taught by one of my first bosses was try and accomplish a goal, especially if this involves something quantitative and math, with the most simple math as possible. And then when you want to add extra things, you can iterate, you can build more, add more features and build it from the ground up. So if I don't need neural networks, if it's only adding, let's say 2%, 5% value, I'm not going to build a neural network. It doesn't make sense. So that's the thing. That's like the smart thing to do. Know when to apply AI. The problem is, and now we're talking from an investor point of view, and we're talking about having your no, I don't want to say market share, your equity increase, the value, your valuations increase. A lot of companies put in AI when AI doesn't really do much and might actually make things worse, simply because that's what's going to get investors putting money into it. Best example is these chatbots, ChatGPT, Claude. We're talking Anthropic, OpenAI, Perplexity, all these places are getting huge money and huge valuations. I mean, ChatGPT's IPO is estimated to be about $1 trillion last time I checked. But it's not really adding $1 trillion worth of value into people's lives. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of hype, and unless they find a way to turn this hype into something actionable that actually has utility, then that's going to be to the detriment of not just them, but us, because we're all connected. So, yeah, I guess what I want you to get from this is AI is big. A lot of it is hype. In your own personal capacity and career, use an AI model where it's necessary, and always use the most simple AI model to get the job done. So yes, I would still say know your AI, understand AI very well, but what's more important or just as important as knowing these AI tools is knowing when to apply them. Did I answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you very much.
Sorry, there was a question I think that was posted by someone here. Okay, Wade, what would your advice be for someone who is pivoting from a different industry to data science besides having a portfolio, projects, networking, can stand out, skip the internship graduate and go straight to junior roles? Yo, skipping internship and graduate program and going straight to junior roles. You mentioned quite a few things, portfolio, projects, and networking. Well, be an interesting person. I would say be an interesting person. Have things outside of that as well, outside of everything career related. Like I said, the degree is not the silver bullet. The degree is part of who you are as a person. So I would, beyond having all of those things, I would focus on things outside. So focus on other forms of intelligence, music, focus on exercise, focus on art, or any of that type of stuff, and make yourself a more interesting person. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed that there is a pattern with rich people. If you've seen really rich people, I don't mean guys driving GTIs, I mean really rich people. They always have very interesting hobbies, art collection, painting, water polo, all these strange hobbies. And the reason why is, again, it makes you a more interesting person. And rich people want to be with someone who has things similar to them. And I'm not targeting rich people, but your rich person is probably your CEO, hiring manager, chairperson of whatever company might be that you want to work for. So always in my opinion, become an interesting person. Do the weird, strange hobbies and build yourself. And again, it'll give you more confidence because you can have networking projects, portfolio, but you also need to build confidence and you need to come across as someone who's competent and knows and gives at least the idea or the feeling that you know what it is you're doing. Yeah, another thing you hadn't put there is just know the industry, know what's going on in the world. I shouldn't say TSMC, especially if you want to get into data science, and that's four letters you've never heard of in your life. Um, I shouldn't say, let's say, what do we call this? 3D chips. I shouldn't say 3D chips and you don't know what that is. I shouldn't say those things. I shouldn't say SK Hynix and you don't know what that is. Because then how are we, like, it shows that you don't know what's going on. Be interested in the industry you're trying to get into so you can be interesting. So you basically have to change what you consume. Less influencer lifestyle, day in the life, get ready with me content, and more. This is what's happening in Silicon Valley this week. This is what Trump's new administrative plan, what the implications are for global markets. A lot more of that. Yeah, that can really take you far. And from a different industry to data science, we're in an era of automation, so you can always pivot. I want to go on to the next question. What are your thoughts on financial modeling and valuation certification? Does it show the right initiatives for graduates interested in investment banking space? So we're talking about the investment banking space. I would go for it. I would go for it. Another caveat I would add to certifications, because we can talk about all the different certifications out there, is attend events that have to do with investment banking. I know Citibank loves to have webinars. I don't know, I don't remember precisely how. You're going to have to go to their website to get that stuff. Attend those events. And what's very important, depends on what division of investment banking you want to get into. If you want to get into proper investment banking, like mergers and acquisitions, then okay, that's fine. But if you want to get into sales or trading and research and all that other stuff, then you're gonna, even with mergers and acquisitions, you're gonna want to be a part of investment banking challenges. So like simulation exercises, simulation days, and where they give you like an hour, what's this, in an investment banking environment. Those are very important. Those are very important if you want to get into investment banking. Investment banking, you best have to know what the industry, what's going on in the industry. So that's more knowing the investment industry than probably any other field, because you have to know, especially if we're talking M&As, then you have to know what do you call this, what an IPO for Anthropic means for the industry. And because that's a company going public, and obviously an investment bank is helping, maybe not as a merger and acquisitions way, but in some shape or form. So you have to know what's going on there. Yeah, so attend those. And also, what do you call this, interviewing. You have to be very good at interviewing if you want to get into investment banking. Like, you have to walk in with a presence and have a way of articulating yourself. So that's another thing I would add to all those certificates. Investment banking really requires you to be holistic, like very holistic, especially if we're talking Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. Maybe you'll get away with being a little less articulate at Netbank or Standard Bank, but even there, yeah, those people are a different breed. Yeah. I don't know if there's any more questions that anyone wants to ask. Zinhle?
Um, so they say that you start building your career from like first year, uh, which is what I am right now. So what kind of projects should I be building in order to build my portfolio, basically?
Uh, it depends. What field do you want to get into?
Data engineering or software engineering, between the two.
But in what fields interest you? Are we talking, what are we talking? Are we talking
Bank,
retail, or are you
banking,
talking anything?
banking.
Banking.
Yeah.
And your question was what kind of projects you want to work on. So the easiest answer to your question is go just ask a chatbot what are the most, yeah, what would be something cutting edge? What is something that is important? I can give you my 2 cents on that. Anything to do with cryptocurrency. Yeah, I know that Bitcoin price went down, but I don't, even if they never adopt Bitcoin, I don't see them like ignoring the potential that blockchain technology has. If we're talking from that perspective and that point of view. Another thing I think banks are quite interested in would be, yeah, I guess, bro, I guess credit risk will always be a thing. Credit risk will always be a thing. So maybe looking at starting projects and looking at risk profiles for certain individuals, given especially the new types of financial institutions coming into place. So maybe the fact that there's companies like Pay Now that allow you to pay later. And now how do we put that into consideration? Another thing is you also kind of want to look at what's going on a global scale. So for banks, that would mean how can we, what for banks, you'd probably also want to figure out how can we use AI and technology to reduce headcount numbers. I know that's a horrible thing, but rather be inside than out. What technologies can we use to put ourselves in a position where we have to hire less people and we can automate all the stuff? So that's quite a few things off the top of my head. But again, just ask chatbot what you can work on, but make sure it's something that's quite relevant to now or will be relevant in the future. Yeah, all that type of stuff, credit risk, um, the volatility of the dollar, anything that has to do with that. I would also, what do you call this? I would also try and find something that is a risk to a bank's revenue and how they can, what's that, now pivot or diversify their holdings to deal with that. Because things, people like APSA now are dealing with insurance. So things like that. Also, yeah, maybe I'm going off the data science point, but I know companies, not just banks, hate having a product that is incomplete in the sense of I can provide you with a retirement annuity, but I can't provide you with a living annuity. I can provide you a way to save for your retirement annuities and not your living annuity. So things like maybe you want to develop something that will allow APSA to also provide living annuities. How you can do that with data science, through research, through doing cases where this many people have RAs and we want to put them in LAs and what the benefit is of that and creating dashboards. Like I said, there's a lot. But do your research on the banks, understand what it is they want to do, what it is they're lacking. If we're talking South Africa, look at what the banks internationally, the best banks are doing and what's not in South African banks, and see if you can run with a project that's similar to that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Uh, is there any more questions? Are there any more questions?
Thank you so much for presenting the Tech Talk today. I think there's no more questions. We really appreciate it. I definitely learned a lot, and I think everyone else in the meeting shares the same sentiment. So thank you so much for that, Hanyane. And yeah, guys, I will share the recording link once it's done uploading. So if you missed the beginning or if you missed the end, don't worry. And yeah, that's all from my side. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you and good night.